Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. There we go. Good morning, Richard. How are you doing this fine Oklahoma morning?
Good morning. Yeah, it's been a comedy of errors, right, Craig? But that's okay.
Well, it has been. But you're here. We're here. We're live. Premier League football is back for game week 8 this weekend, with Nottingham Forest playing last as they take on Crystal Palace at the City Ground at 8 p.m. on Monday night. As Forest look to rectify their home form with a win against struggling Palace, there remains injury doubts over their main man, Morgan Gibbs-White, and goalkeeper Matz Sels faces a late fitness test as he looks to recover from an adductor muscle injury that kept him out of the Belgium squad for their 2 matches in this break. Forest also have selection dilemmas in midfield, with 4 missing players in this key area. So how will the Reds line up and tackle this one? Will Nuno try something different again, or will he stick to his tried and tested 4-2-3-1 formation? To digest all of that, with his usual blend of stats and facts, joining Richard and I, it's Danscape. Daniel San, how are you, sir?
Good morning. Yeah, lovely to see you. It's been a while. It feels like it's been a long time with all the other news.
It has.
That's gone up.
It has, yeah, because you were. We did the Chelsea game with Raf. You were, I think, off gallivanting around the country. I think you had a little bit of a break. So good to welcome you back to us, to join us. The time has just gone 11 a.m. on Friday, the 18th of October. And yes, finally, Premier League football is back again.
Gone from power guitar to classical.
Well, I've got it all, mate. You know, I've got it all. If you're new to the channel, then welcome back. And if you've been here before, you're always welcome to join us and get involved. Thank you if you are joining us live on YouTube. Please do get involved in the comments. Let us know your thoughts and views throughout. And for any people that are listening later or watching this on playback, welcome to Talking Reds. Right, today's Forest shirt that I've got on is the 3rd shirt from 2001 to 2003. They had it for a couple of seasons, and it was in fact a very kind gift from Richard as I celebrated my birthday this week, just a few days ago. Yes, indeed, I have now turned the magical 50. So if you haven't already, a lovely birthday present for me would be if you would kindly hit like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Oh, yes. So, today's quiz question before we get right into it. How many permanent managers have Nottingham Forest had in their history? How many permanent managers have Nottingham Forest had in their entire history? That's the quiz question. That doesn't include caretakers. I'm talking permanent managers, that obviously head coaches, managers. So none of the caretakers. How many permanent managers have Forest had in their entire history? All right, okay, let's crack on. We are looking forward to the Crystal Palace match on Monday night. Danscape, general thoughts on the game ahead?
Probably the most apprehensive I've been about a game this season for this one. I think it's because of the sort of momentum that could be built or could be lost on the back of it. So I'm a little bit apprehensive, not for any reason in terms of performances or how we've been playing or how Palace have been playing. I think we should go into it with confidence, but it's one of those games where I think after this, because obviously we've got the game against Leicester, which at the minute it feels like everyone's sort of collectively downplaying that one, and we'll see when we get to the kick-off on that one, all the context around that particular game. But yeah, it feels like this could be a really good way to go into that with a lot of momentum, or it could be one of those that just derails us a little bit if we don't have a good performance.
Yeah, Richard, how are you feeling about the game on Monday, mate?
Yeah, very cautiously optimistic. I think knowing that Palace has not won a match, I believe, at this point, so that makes them somewhat dangerous. I think they're going to be, I assume, trying to play with every ounce of effort and commitment and to getting that win that they possibly can. But hopefully this is the time when we turn the corner on the home form and, with a team that clearly is not playing to the expectations that we all had for them for this season. And certainly Oliver Glasner along with Gary O'Neill is kind of those two managers on the hot seat. So we'll see what happens. But I'm cautiously optimistic that we can get a win here, get 3 points. And we need to get back to winning ways at home. So.
We do indeed, and I think this is the game to do it. So, we go in last in the game week, having all the games on Saturday and Sunday before we kick off, of course, on Monday. Is that any kind of advantage, Dan, in terms of recovery from the international break or knowing what other teams have done? Do you think that makes any kind of difference at all?
At this stage of the season, I don't think it matters seeing what other teams have done. I can't think of many results that I've been looking out for, so far. That'll come perhaps later in the season. But and I guess the international break, yes, it does help us, but it also helps Palace in the same way. I'm sure they've got a few players. I think there's one or two names that'll crop up, but they've got players coming back from injuries as well. So having the extra few days helps them as much as it helps us. Will it be the difference between Gibbs-White being able to make an appearance or not? Having those extra 2 days, you never know. But I think the night games always seem to be like one way or the other for us. We either go and have a brilliant performance, or we kind of end up having a bit of a disaster. That's just my opinion. I'm sure if I check the results, it's probably a whole mix. But it never feels like there's a boring night game at the City Ground.
Yeah, I mean, Richard and I were on Forest Fan TV last night together, which was an interesting hour and a half and quite enjoyable. So do go and check that out as well. We were talking about the Palace game on that one, and I kept referencing that the night game under the lights and so on. And I saw one comment on that particular podcast. He said, "Oh, under the lights means F all," and I thought about that, and I thought, well, I think it's just a turn of phrase, but. I actually disagree. I think a night game under the lights is a completely different environment, Richard, to like a 3 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday. Environments and weather and other factors have an influence on a match. I think. I absolutely think that when the game is played, the hour it's played, the conditions it's played in, must have some kind of say on the match itself. And I think it does favour the home team when it's a night match under the lights, just purely because of that atmosphere and buzz that can be created. And Crystal Palace have got a really good home support as well. I mean, when they get going with their drum, but when they get going, it is good, and so I'm pleased that this one under the lights is at the City Ground. What do you think about that? Do you think that actually, under the lights, night game, whether we're like the last to play or the first play, I'm just talking about the actual under the lights factor. What do you think about that? Does that make any difference at all?
I think it does, and I think coupled with our fans knowing and being acutely aware of where we're at in terms of our home form, so they're going to be up for this one. The energy is going to be palpable, I would believe, and it typically is when they're at the City Ground anyway. I mean, we felt that when we were there, and that was during the day. But likening it to something that I've experienced, especially here, right? Because I haven't experienced the City Ground at night, to be honest with you. The matches I've seen have all been during the day, but it's always been electric. It's always been jam-packed with fans. It's never seemed to be lacking that atmosphere as you referenced. But like here at University of Oklahoma, where they play American football, there's a very different setup and a very different way that they manage that night game, because they know that there's something they can do to try to generate that as well. Now, will the people at the City Ground do the same thing? Maybe not, because it's pretty crazy what they do here with the way they turn the lights down when someone turns a touchdown, and then it just starts flickering and it just creates this intense atmosphere.
Are you trying to say that Americans love razzmatazz? Because I would never have guessed that.
Maybe just slightly. I don't think anyone would expect that, right? Yeah. So no pomp and circumstance over here in the States, but yeah, it definitely seems like it does. I think, and just generally when people come into the ground, they're already sort of primed, right, knowing what they're going to experience. So I would agree with you. I don't think that's completely crazy.
So the crowd can play their part. We hope that everyone attending on Monday, and there's been a little bit of I don't want to say drop in interest, because I think that isn't true. There hasn't been a drop in interest, but more tickets have been available for this, and the fact that it's an 8 o'clock kickoff on a Monday night and it's on Sky is obviously going to have an impact on the people that perhaps want to take a ticket. You know, some people can't make night games and so on, and this is in no way, shape or form a dig aimed at anybody. I actually think it's quite a nice thing that there's more tickets available for people that want to go, because there has been a clamour for tickets, Dan. So if you go on the website, they have been on general sale. I think you still need to register an ID number to get a ticket. But you know, the games are opening up now a bit more for fans. So if you're going to the match, play your part, get involved, sing along. On the pitch, Dan, you touched on Morgan Gibbs-White just a moment ago. The Athletic reporting that he is out for this match, and also the Leicester game as well. And I looked at their report and I thought, okay, what inside knowledge do they have? And I couldn't see in the article them stating a source had said this. What they did talk about was the fact that he was still in the protective boot as of Wednesday night. So are they basing their assumption he's out on the fact that he's in a boot? And if so, I don't think that necessarily means anything. I still got a sneaky suspicion that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors at play, and we're going to see him feature on Monday night. What about you? Talk to us about Morgan Gibbs-White. Do you think he'll play? We're going to get into talk about formations and selections and so on, but so just give us your thoughts on Morgan, and if he is out, how much of a miss he'll be.
Yeah, if it's all based on the TikTok post that's been going around showing him in the boot, then I would not put it past the club at all to have thought this through and thought, well, we can, we'll talk to him about it. Obviously, it's not him, it's his partner and everything, but, we'll talk to him about it. We can put it out on this date. Maybe that'll get some rumours going. It'll just bring that element of doubt into Palace's mind, and then he ends up starting, or at least he's on the bench. I mean, if it is a ligament tendon thing, then potentially he could sort of play, but he'll be playing with a bit of pain, and, he could have an injection and all that. There's probably lots of scenarios where he could play, but it might in the long term be worse for him, or he ends up just sitting out 2 games and then he's back and fully firing. So personally, I'd probably not expect him to start. It wouldn't surprise me if he was on the bench and he was just there as an option for 20 minutes if we needed it. But then again, we're sort of at that stage of the season where we don't need to be risking someone for points, do we? We've got the backup, we've got the other options. So I'm probably expecting to not see him play, and I expect us to still, though, have a good threat without him, because I think we might come on to, like, say, personnel, but I think Jota's definitely right there, ready to step into that gap and have an impact for a full 90 minutes, or at least from the start for 60 minutes, something like that. We've got to now show that we've got a plan B without him, because we know that he's not going to be here forever. And we know that we're in a position where we can afford to take a few risks in terms of formation and try personnel, because we're in a good league position. We've got points on the board, and it should be more a case of, right, let's have a real go at finding that plan B now, because we've got nothing to lose.
Indeed. Good morning to Nick Fadley, who joins us once again. No, not 55 and not even 54, young man. Still just the big 50. So don't try and add more years on me. Thank you very much. Owen Bailey, good morning to you. He says fans need to be on it Monday night, as he means Palace, aren't bringing too many. Yes, and they did have a reduced number of tickets for this one. So, yeah, the fans need to definitely be getting on it. We did mention that we were on FFTV last night, it could be right about the smoke and mirrors. We'll have to wait and see if MGW actually plays. What about you, Richard? I mean, Dan is right, isn't he, when he says, look, it's too early in the season to start taking risks on players. If he's not fully fit, if he's got to take an injection or painkillers to play, Isn't it just better just to leave him out and make sure that we don't make anything worse?
Absolutely. Yeah, because you don't want to mortgage your future on the season for trying to get 3 points against a team who's reeling right now, right? We with what we can put on the pitch without him, as much as we want him there, because clearly we understand the impact he has and how he orchestrates from that 10 position, it's not worth it. I mean, we all believe we can get the 3 points without him because we were planning on that and thinking that before we even had any insight that it might even be remotely possible that he could play. So I would absolutely agree with that. Don't put yourself at risk. There's too much to lose, especially considering what we've got ahead of us as well. We haven't played Man City yet. We haven't played Arsenal yet. So there's times where we're really going to need that presence for us, that leadership, his creativity, the chaos, as Dan likes to say. So let's wait for that moment. Let's wait for those matches and things of that nature for him to be fully fit.
Yeah, I guess if there's a game that you would choose where, potentially he's not going to start, it's the home game to Palace, who have been struggling. And so, yeah, we're going to have to just wait because Nuno's not going to give anything away in his press conference. The other player that we need to keep an eye on is Matz Sels, Dan. Now, he didn't link up with Belgium on this international break following his best game in a Forest shirt, probably, against Chelsea. He's had other good games previously as well, but he really kind of stood out against Chelsea for all the saves he made, and a lot of the furore around his play seems to have just calmed down a little bit. But all of a sudden, there's a chance that he might be out as well. My gut feeling is that I think he will be fine to play. But if Matz Sels doesn't make it and Miguel gets his chance, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it could be another, because his cup game for Miguel was under the lights against Newcastle, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it'll be straight back into the same atmosphere, and he seemed to love it. So
yeah,
I'm sure Miguel will be chomping at the bit to have a go on that pitch again. And having seen, I think it was on the Forest Focus podcast the other day with the goalkeeper kind of analysing them, he kind of seemed to be quite positive about Miguel in that one appearance as well. So it kind of bumped up my confidence that Miguel could step in and do a job as well. But I think, like you, Sels is probably going to be okay for it. I think it was a precautionary thing. He's obviously felt something and decided to pull out the international games because, again, they're just friendlies anyway. So I expect Sels will be playing, but I sort of have a little bit more confidence in Miguel, and it would probably be a game that would really suit him with the atmosphere again.
Yeah, I think that if he gets picked to play because of an injury, that's what he's there for. He's the number 2 goalkeeper, and we've all been talking about the goalkeeper situation for long enough. So I hope it's Sels. I think Sels is the number 1. My gut feeling is that he'll play, but we'll again just have to wait and see. So let's get into it on the real conversation about formation, team selection, and how Nuno is going to go. All right. So in terms of, let's say Gibbs-White is out, Richard, we spoke on FFTV last night about this in great detail, so we're going to probably end up repeating a lot of what we spoke about here, which is fine. Dan, obviously want to hear your thoughts as well. The contenders, the candidates, Jota Silva coming in straight to replace Morgan Gibbs-White in the 10, or moving Elliot Anderson up into the 10 and playing Dominguez next to Yates in the midfield. Who plays on the right? Is it Alanga or Jota, depending on the 10? So, mostly it's surrounding 1 or 2 positions. And I think we agreed, and maybe you'll disagree, Dan, but the back 4, if it Sels in goal with the back 4 of Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina and Moreno, that seems pretty set, right? That back 4 seems like it will be the one. So, but Dan, you put together a few stats when we're thinking about replacing Morgan Gibbs-White. So I'll switch back to you actually, because you created this slide. Take us through, and I think this is concerning the likes of Jota, Silva, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Morgan's on there as well, Alanga, Wood, 1 or 2 others. So take us through your chart there when it comes to replacing Morgan Gibbs-White.
So this is every player in the squad that's played more than 90 minutes so far this season in the Premier League. So I think the only player that's probably would be on this chart if you went below 90 minutes is probably Sosa. But other than that, what this is showing is that although Jota hasn't played a great deal of minutes, if you take his per 90 minute stats, his impact across most of these measures, which are, obviously going down in terms of impact. So goals and assists is obviously what you want from every player, down to sort of shots on
Just
target
take us through them for those listening, if you could.
Yeah, so Jota has got the highest goals and assists per 90 minutes for us, but because he's obviously not played that many minutes, it doesn't necessarily translate into him having lots of goals and assists. But when he's come on, he's had an impact. He's had a bigger impact per minute played than Chris Wood, Anthony Elanga, Morgan Gibbs-White, Elliot Anderson, Callum Hudson-Odoi, and anybody else. In terms of goal-creating actions, it's the same again. He's top of the list with Gibbs-White just behind him. When it comes to key passes, which is the pass that leads directly to having a shot, he's actually top of that per 90 minutes as well. Shot creating actions, he's still in the top 4, but he's a little bit lower down. Having shots himself per minute on the pitch, he's second there above Gibbs-White and Wood. Even though he's not playing that long, he's still, when he comes on, he has an impact. And shots on target as well, he's at the top there. So when you look at that chart, what we're losing in Gibbs-White in terms of per 90-minute impact so far this season is actually slightly behind the impact that Jota's had when he's come on the pitch. And that is all full of context because he's coming on at the end of games when teams are tired, he's exploiting space and things like that. So it's not to say that Jota's, you can say from this that Jota's going to come in and do a better job than Gibbs-White. But what it's saying is that when he's come on, he's had a big impact. He's really, really impacted, not just from what our opinion is, which I think is all positive about him, but in terms of stats he's delivered. He's obviously got that crucial assist against Brighton away, but he's involved in build-up plays, having shots himself. So I guess it gives us a reason to almost say that he should be getting that pick now.
So what do you think in terms of player to come in, Richard? I mean, we're talking about the number 10 role. So don't worry about the wide role at the moment. Based on what Dan has just presented to us, and I know that you're a big Elliot Anderson fan, as many are, and rightly so. What are you thinking now in terms of that number 10 position? Because I think when you did your team last night, I think you were selecting Elliot Anderson for that role. Has anything that you've seen here from Dan made you change your decision? Or do you think, no, Elliot is the way to go forwards for this one?
Yeah, there's still an element of curiosity from my perspective, just because of what we had talked about prior to the season starting, right? When he got signed, was the notion that he would be that potential successor. At the same time, when you look at the statistics here, it's very evident that Jota is the choice. And what I don't know, and I don't know if Dan has this information, was how frequently has he featured in a midfield role previous to like Vitória Guimarães? Was how many times did he play midfield on that team? I'm not sure. I think generally speaking, maybe it's just based off of how we've utilized him to date, and it seems like we've utilized him more in that wing role. But I can definitely see the case at this point, Greg, for what you had proposed, which was to put him in that number 10, because I think he's got elements to his game. And I think Dan's mentioned this on previous podcasts with us. It seems like he definitely has a similar sort of style to Morgan, if not quite at the same level. He certainly has a similar style.
So on the screen now, what I've just put up is the FOT mob with that back four showing. And as it currently stands, I've got Yates and Anderson in the midfield two. Yates being more of the CDM/6. Anderson operating as more of that deep lying 8 coming forwards. Hudson-Odoi on the left. Elanga on the right. Jota Silva in the Morgan Gibbs-White number 10 role. And Chris Wood up top. So that's just one of the options. And that was the team that I selected when we were on FFTV. Dan, what are you thinking? I mean, you made the case quite strongly, it seems, with your stats for Jota. Are you a Jota man for this game or something else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously against Fulham, we played 4-4-2, which was kind of a 4-4-1-1. Chris Wood played a lot deeper than Awoniyi. So although it still looks like the 4-2-3-1, it could turn into more of a 4-4-1-1, and Jota plays quite high up. So he's not really playing in the midfield to link. He's basically going to pick up scraps around Chris Wood when he tries to, knock the ball down, flick it on, and cause his classic chaos that we love him for. So I think that's what I would see him in as that role. The reason I would probably pick him as well is so that you've got Dominguez on the bench as a backup for Anderson and Yates in the deeper role, because Jota's not going to play in either of those two positions. So I think it's sensible to have Dominguez as an option to bring on should Anderson or Yates pick up a yellow or a knock or whatever. So that formation for me looks good because you've just got pure impact across that front four, haven't you? All those players on their day impact the result. They can create, they can score.
Yeah, and when you talk about Jota playing in the midfield, Richard, I mean, what I consider to be the midfield would be this area here, Yates and Anderson, and this area is technically a kind of a central attacking midfielder. So whilst he'll drop into these areas, it's more about the work that he's doing up here supporting Wood and moving around into these areas here. So I would just prefer to see the one change, because I think against Fulham, when he mixed it up and went just a little bit maverick, it really didn't work too much. We ended up losing 1-0 to a contentious penalty. So some might say it wasn't that bad, but we want to try and win the game. And I know Alanga's, being a bit hot and cold, and I've had my concerns about that as well. But I still want to see him given a chance under the lights against Crystal Palace on Monday night. I mean, the other option is that we do change it. So we put Anderson in there. We take Silva and we put Dominguez in. And so Silva doesn't get a start. He actually doesn't get a start unless you put him here. If you take Anthony Elanga out and you say, all right, we want to make Anthony Elanga the player that's going to come off the bench and cause an impact. So we've automatically mixed it around. But like you've just said, Dan, Dominguez and Yates and Anderson are all on the pitch. They're the only three fit kind of midfielders that can play in that deeper lying area. So if all three are playing, what do you do about changes, Richard? So if we did go with Elliot Anderson, because this was your team, wasn't it? If we did go with Elliot Anderson in that 10, and I mean, I know you toyed with Jota or Elanga on the right, but let's just leave Jota there for the moment. Yates and Dominguez in the deeper roles. Let's say it's 0-0 on 65 minutes. What changes are you making to your team? It's 0-0, 65, 70 minutes. You're Nuno now. This is the team you've picked. So how are you going to change it to get the win?
I think if you're going to need to pull out, let's say Dominguez maybe gets a little bit of a knock, or you can see something's going on with him and you have to take him off the pitch, you can move Anderson back, you can move Jota over, and you can put Elanga in. So I don't think it's completely impossible that if you do start with Dominguez, because I kind of rattled off some stats last night in terms of tackles won, tackles in the defensive third, dribblers challenged, successful dribblers challenged, blocks, interceptions and so forth. He's in a very high percentile for those statistics. And so what you do when you have someone like him on the pitch right away is you set the tone for how you're going to manage the middle of the field. So I like that idea. I like that sort of energy and that intensity and that sort of balance between attacking and defensive play that you might get if you bring in Dominguez as well as, I mean, you get that with Anderson as well. We've seen how successful he's been in terms of playing more of a defensive role as well as sort of supporting the attack that we've needed. But yeah, I mean, I kind of flipped from the Elanga starting moment to Jota just based off of the things that Dan just presented. I think he's earned it as well. I think he's shown that he has a propensity to lift the team from an attacking perspective. And so whereas Elanga's had isolated moments, but he's not been consistently good throughout the season. So maybe it's an opportunity for him to be that super sub or that impact sub that I know Greg, has been a topic of conversation on previous podcasts. So we appreciate that he's, has that pace, that electric pace, but invariably he's not where he needs to be right now. And Jota is. He's actually better, I think, than we expected.
And there's been talk about the wingers and the fact that Hudson-Odoi has played on the right when Elanga's been dropping out. All of Elanga's best work in the last season that he was here with us, which was season 2 in the Premier League for us, his best work was done on the left when he played on the left. Although I count that, I think when we played against Newcastle, he was on the right when we'd got the hat trick, because I remember him crossing from the right. So, there's discrepancies along the way. Hudson-Odoi clearly has got his trademark that he's very successful with. The other player, Dan, that is not getting so much of a mention, but has still made a bit of an impact is Ramon Sosa. Do you still see Ramon Sosa as a bench option only at the moment?
Yeah, but I mean, I've been really impressed when he has come on. He's only had sort of 20-minute appearances, but he's had he's had a real impact when he's come on, and he's looked strong enough for the league as well. A couple of times, he's sort of managed to hold off players while he's been running with the ball and things like that. So I think he is, he's on the right track to really competing for these places. And whilst I would still trust Elanga myself at the minute, he does need to start having an impact on games again. That pass against Liverpool was brilliant. He needs to be doing something like that in games to hold his place. Otherwise, Sosa will also be definitely pushing for a wide spot. And it's the same with Hudson-Odoi, isn't it? He had more of an impact against Chelsea than perhaps I appreciated when I was watching it. But again, if he's not scoring that trademark goal, he still has to be continuing to offer something to the team. Otherwise, there's people to replace him now. So it's good to have that selection dilemma. We'd be stronger with Gibbs-White, in terms of build-up play, but in terms of hopefully still being able to get an impact at the other end of the pitch, then we've got the bodies and the skill set to cause teams problem. And obviously Palace are likely to play a back three, which is probably the first time we've faced a back three. So it'd be interesting to see whether we do make any tactical shifts to kind of exploit some of the different spaces that we'll get, which is probably wide players.
Morning to Grumpy Old Ray. He says at home he'd prefer Dominguez to Yates. Bring Yates on later to close it out if necessary. Also hopes that Taiwo gets a run out and not in the way that Nuno went against Fulham, but giving Wood a rest. So I've just made a few changes when you were talking, Dan, and I've gone a little bit kind of maverick with a lot of changes. Now, I hope that this isn't the case that he does this, but for those listening, I've taken Yates out and put Dominguez in as per Grumpy Old Ray's suggestion. So Anderson and Dominguez in those deeper midfield roles, 6 and 8 together. Jota Silva in the 10. I've moved Hudson-Odoi over to the right, so Elanga's benched, and Ramon Sosa gets a start on the left. So Wood's still up top. I mean, I still like the look of that team. I've got to be honest with you. We're making these changes, and I still think, well, that's still a bloody good side. I mean, is there any chance that Nuno is going to just try and mix it up again, Dan, and try and do something a bit different? Or is he just literally got to keep it as simple as possible with that one change?
I don't get the impression Nuno's bothered about the feedback that he had from that Fulham game. I think he's, he likes to think about these things, I'm sure, and he likes to trust his analysts and his team around him. So I don't think he's just making the decision on his own. I think it's well thought through. And so I don't think he'll just say, well, I must have been wrong because the fans didn't like it. You sort of don't want him to do that because he's the manager. He should know better than us. He should see the players every day. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had something slightly different up his sleeve. I think the bigger issue with that Fulham game was in those wide areas, wasn't it? It was having Anderson out wide, Dominguez out wide. That felt like it just held us back in an attacking sense, as opposed to necessarily being about the problem of Wood and Awoniyi up front. They didn't get as much service as you'd expect because they didn't have Elanga, Hudson-Odoi behind them to knock the ball into the box, basically. So my hope is that he goes with the wingers mainly. I don't really mind as much what he does in the central area because I think that's sort of up to him. He'll have a plan for it. But the wingers, you kind of do want Hudson-Odoi and Elanga just so that we've got that outlet, especially against their playing a back three. If their wing backs push on, that's got to be prime for Hudson-Odoi to do his trademark goal. I'm assuming Sheffield United probably played a back three that game when he scored two and probably should have scored 3 doing that exact move. And that's probably because there's that extra bit of space on that side of the pitch, and then you can come up against 3 centre backs as opposed to just having a full back, almost man marking you. So hopefully there's an opportunity for him there.
Morning to Wolfie from FFTV. He said that's his team. He said switch the wingers over. So I have switched the wingers over. And so he'd go with Hudson-Odoi on the left and Sosa on the right. I mean, there's an argument to be made that team would work. I mean, I feel that just the one change with Silva in for Morgan would be the way forward. But we've got options. Quick word on Awoniyi, Richard. He went away with Nigeria, got 15 minutes off the bench in the first game. I kind of lost track as to actually, did they play that second game against Libya? I don't think they did. They were holed up in the airport for hours and hours and hours without access to fresh food and water and stuff like that. So it doesn't sound great. I hope Aina and Awoniyi are okay. Do we need to see some minutes for Taiwo Awoniyi in this match? I want Wood to start, But if he came off on the hour mark and Taiwo came on, is that what we now need to see for Taiwo and Forest?
I think the comment was made that last night that we feel like we're further into the season than we really are. I think you made that comment, Greg, and that's so by virtue of the fact that we're not that many games into the season. I think to understand as we're progressing forward whether he's really in the plan for the team, both leading into the January window and beyond. Yes, I mean we need to see, can the guy actually, provide some meaningful impact to the team. That would lead you to believe that he actually is a part of the plans. The interesting comment that was made by Nuno was something to the effect of, we'll see if he's an option. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that was what he said in that recent article where they were interviewing Taiwo, and then they had interviewed Nuno as well. So it makes me wonder how much of an option is he really, which is why I made the statement last night. I don't know really if he's really in the plans going forward, but I would absolutely agree with that, because I think you've got to manage the minutes of Wood, like we've said, because you don't want to burn him out, especially considering he's been playing quite a bit for New Zealand. I think he played 2 games. He was starting. He played a vast majority of that game and scored 2 goals in those games. So he's certainly been performing well. His form isn't dipping, but it's how you manage those minutes that's of concern, because if he gets injured and we've only got to rely on Taiwo, as we've said multiple times, that's problematic. So you can have a spot start potentially from a guy like Jota in that position, or even a Langa, which wouldn't be preferable, but that is an option if we had it, worst case scenario. But I would agree with you. I want to see him. I want to see what he can provide, because he has goals in him. We've seen that before.
The signing of James Ward-Prowse was a little bit of a surprise when it happened, but one that I was fully on board with and still am. I know that there's been a couple of comments about him and his effects on games so far, but I think it's still far too early to start losing our head over that. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that the midfield area with Sangare out, Danilo out, we're missing Gibbs-White through suspension, through injury, I beg your pardon, and James Ward-Prowse through suspension. It does leave, without the numbers that we've got, we would be desperately short. We would have to be, resorting to possibly a 3-5-2 or something like that. I don't know, or 4-3-3. So to have the numbers is really good. But should we be particularly worried about the midfield area then, Dan? I mean, I just mentioned then that the team that we selected still looks really strong. Nico Dominguez is still a great player. I mean, I think he's a fantastic player. I have always thought he's one of our strongest midfielders. And in fact, no one has pressed more. He is the king of the press. But I think the stat is there that no one has pressed more per 90, I think, than Nico Dominguez. I think I read that. So he needs to be utilised properly. So could we see him possibly being pushed further up to kind of work in that press? What do you think about that? Maybe Nico in the number 10.
I think we are. I think the Fulham home game showed that we miss Danilo. For me, I think he would have been a much more driving force in that midfield, and it would have given us different options to play. So I think we do miss Danilo. I think when you look at stats and numbers from last season, we just score more goals when he's on the pitch, and that is our problem this season. Is we're not really creating enough chances. We're not quite creating enough chances to differentiate ourselves at home in tight games when teams come and want to defend against us. So I think we do miss Danilo. I think Dominguez obviously is he's kind of strange because he's got more tackles per 90 minute than Sangare. He's kind of, his stats suggest he's that holding 6 player, but he's not, because when you see him, he charges around the pitch and he makes those tackles all over the pitch. And the question is, I guess what Nuno's issue is that if he's not going to play as the holding player and he's going to do that press, if that's not the game plan, then Nuno doesn't sort of trust him to just stick to the game plan. He's maybe trying to do what he wants to do a little bit too much for Nuno to want to start him in that central 2 midfielders. He had the most impact when he was playing in that kind of three-man midfield, didn't he? When he first came in under Cooper with Sangare, Dominguez and Mangala, and the 3 of them sort of seemed to work a reasonable way of playing, and Dominguez had the most impact in terms of goals. He chipped in with a couple of goals in the last season. So I don't personally see him choosing Dominguez over Anderson and Yates in this one. I think we could do to see a little bit more from Anderson in terms of impact. He's got an assist from a corner so far this season, but he didn't. The chart I showed with Jota at the top, he didn't really feature into that yet. He's not really helping us create too many shots and contribution in terms of goals or assists. So although he looks good and he looks like he's going to be a player and he's got a brilliant engine for playing 90 minutes, I do just think he could do to make a few little better decisions in and around the box, because he had some chances to really push us on and replace Danilo.
Question from Wolfie. He's asking, and it's a bit left field, so we have got time just to go over this. It's something that's come up previously. Would you put Murillo in as a CDM and bring Morato in at the back? Richard, I'll come to you first on that. What are your thoughts on Wolfie's question about putting Murillo in as a CDM and bringing Morato in at the back?
Yeah, it's been interesting at moments where you've seen him technically drift into a similar space and area where that person would in that role would operate. I think he's got the skill on the ball to be effective. We can certainly pass the ball with good accuracy and cause some challenges for the opposing team in that regard. So I wouldn't say it's completely outside of the box, out of the box too much to say that that's an option if you really had to do it, right? And I think that's the value of what we've discussed, and you brought it up just now. It's like we have that versatility, we have that capability of doing those things, in terms of how we've managed the depth on the wings, how we've managed the depth in the midfield, and the kind of players that we just field week in and week out that potentially could operate in different ways. I'm assuming Nuno's thinking about that as the formational chemist that he is, the tactical chemist that we feel like he's become. It's not impossible in my mind to think he's already preparing for something to that effect if he had to, right? He's looking at the landscape of who he's got on his bench and on his team, and he can say, okay, what other areas can they cover in a worst case scenario? So I wouldn't say it's too crazy. I wouldn't be opposed to it either. I think he's got all the skill sets to do that. It's just a matter of not having seen him do it officially or formally.
I'm going to jump in before we move on and just say it's a firm no from me. We talked about Murillo possibly. I'd suggested that maybe he'd be suitable as a left back. I actually have changed my mind back again now. I don't want to see him moved out into a left back position. I don't want to see him tried in the CDM. I don't think the Premier League is the place to do that. I think the strong reason I've got is that I absolutely do not want to see Milenkovic and Murillo separated as a pair. They need to be playing together. So if you move Murillo out of that centre-back position, then we're causing ourselves more problems than I think we need to. That's become very settled. Defensively, we are astute. We are leading on a lot of charts. I made the argument for Milenkovic many times, and here it is again, that he's our best signing in the last 25 years, that he is getting the best out of Murillo and the fullbacks around him. And I think Murillo positionally might get caught short in the CDM role. We saw it with a very, very good player in Trent Alexander-Arnold, who steps into the midfield from right back for Liverpool and does it very well. But he's coming in as an additional body, and he's not necessarily having to worry too much about the other duties of the central midfielder. When he was playing as the central midfielder in the tournament in the summer, that's where you could see he was getting caught out of position. And I fear that Murillo, because he's still so young and learning so much, that he hasn't played that position before, and to put him in that role, I think he could do a job to a certain degree, but I just don't think it would be something that we should be doing, and I don't think it's something that Nuno has thought about doing personally. So it would be a firm no from me. I think I'd rather go with three at the back and then build with Morato, Murillo, Milenkovic, wing backs, and then go forward from there. Dan, you look like you. Dan wants to come in.
I'll allow Murillo in central midfield if we can have Bolly up front. So it's like it's both on then for me.
Well, and let me say, Greg, I don't want to see that happen. I don't think that should ever happen. But if it was a absolute, there's no other alternative, because you've got to be able to cover that area of the pitch. You're right. We can switch the formation up more so than when we start experimenting with someone like that who we know functions brilliantly in his current role. But I agree with tend to agree with you. Don't want it.
Indeed. Okay, time is moving along. I want to quickly, just before we finish on the game, just get your thoughts about the opposition. Daniel-san, how are Palace going to hurt us? Who are their danger men? They're missing, obviously, Elise, who's setting the world on fire at Bayern Munich. I mean, blimey, if ever there was an elevation of a player, then that's it. But Eze's still there. They've obviously struggled. They haven't got to win this season. I think their play or their matches on the road, without me looking at, have been not so bad. But how can they hurt us? What do we need to worry about, Daniel-san?
Yeah, there's some stats, Richard, on that slide if it's to hand, just to compare the two, compare us to them. Greg, if you've got it. I don't know. Let's can read that, but the summary of it is for anyone listening is that attacking wise, we're quite similar. In terms of attacking threat, similar chances created. The difference is that they haven't taken their chances. I think they're sort of -4 on their expected goals, and we're -1 that we should have scored, which is that Milinkovic chance at Southampton, basically. So attacking wise, we're sort of creating a similar amount of chances. What Palace lack is I think skillful wide players that are going to take on fullbacks. I think they tend to play quite centrally because they tend to play with like Eze out wide, and he'll want to drift into the middle. So I think they offer a different threat to Chelsea, who obviously has like Madueke and Palmer constantly dribbling at our fullbacks and trying to take us on. I think Palace will probably play with more possession. They'll try and build up a little bit slower, a little bit more with passes rather than just taking us on 1v1. But ultimately, they've sort of lacked an attacking threat. So that could come back to people saying that we were right not to sign Nketiah. And we should, and Chris was just the better striker. But I think from what I've heard, Nketiah's been asked to play out of position a little bit. And he's been trying to play Nketiah and Mateta as well in the same team and things like that. So I think they've got some good players, but they are lacking that little bit of quality to get them through tight games. Because they've not been resoundingly beaten in their games, Palace. And as you can see, defensively, we've just done better. They're not terrible defensively. But we are just really good defensively. We have got the sort of third best defense in the league overall, whereas they're kind of around 10th, 12th. So, yeah, it's a game that could finish 0-0 if you look at the attacking stats, because neither team are high up in the league in terms of creating chances. Defensively, we should go into the game expecting to keep a clean sheet based on our record so far. So, it's there for us to nick a win. Could just be a 1-0 boring game, but sometimes when the numbers tell you this, what happens in the game is it ends up 4-3 because everything just goes out the window.
Okay, let's get some score predictions then on this one. I'll come to you first, Richard. Have you changed your view on what you said last night, and now you've thought about it some more? For those who didn't see, tell us what you're thinking for Forest v Palace on Monday night.
Yeah, I was trying to give a little ode to Jess on the Forest Fan TV in the comments with her perpetual support financially and from a comments perspective for Forest
I've never seen so many super chats in my life.
It was amazing.
Wolfie is amazing.
Yeah. So I'm going to stick with my prediction. I'm going to say it's a 2-0 win for Forest. I think Chris Wood has a brace. I think he's just feeling it right now, both in terms of his play on the field for us as well as in the international level. So I'm going with a Chris Wood brace. We win 2-0 and we get that away win, or that home win that we've needed desperately for so long.
Danscape, what about you?
I think a 2-1 win, Forest. I think it could be tight until the end. I think we've got the better bench to come on and change the game. Nick the win quite late on, I think.
Let us know in the chat what you think about the score as well. I'm going 3-0. I think that this is the game where we really see Forest produce the goods in a half of at least a half of football, even without Gibbs-White. Some scintillating play is going to come our way. Chris Wood's going to score. Milinkovic's going to score as well. Jota Silva's definitely going to score. So 3-0 to Forest. Let us know what you think. Mark thinks it's going to be 1-0 to Forest with Cristiano Ronaldo to score the goal. Morning to Martin Sherlock Holmes. Yes, it was nice to be on FFTV. Thank you very much for your comment, Martin. We've been invited to go back, so you might see us at some point down on that channel in the future as well. In the meantime, guys, we've got a little bit of time left, but before we do that, I want to show you the latest cheese ad. It's something new, so a bit more visual. Dan, it's just before midday. if you're listening, you're not going to hear any music this time. This is a new ad featuring a review that was done for the Cheese Trader in York by the Yorkshireman on Instagram. We pinched his review and we've spliced it up, and our video editor, Ricardo Sprayo over in Oklahoma, has got to work. Here it comes.
This York shop is a cheese lover's paradise. The Cheese Trader is home to an array of fine British cheeses, not only selling it but offering an epic cheesy street food menu too. Guests can choose from a main dish and then select all the different types of cheese they'd like on top, alongside an array of other toppings. We tried their loaded fries and posh cheese toasties, both of which were absolutely smothered in gorgeous melted cheddar. We even chose a whole camembert to top our fries, which was so tasty, like a cheesy salt and pepper dish. The posh cheese on toast was some of the best toast we've ever had, with so many amazing flavours to it that perfectly paired with the cheese, tucked away just off Grape Lane. This is the perfect spot for a great lunch.
And there you go. I mean, I think, you know, if you weren't getting your mouth watering with the other ad we've got, which is the picture slides, then that live action one with those melted cheeses there. I mean, Dan, you must be salivating at that.
Loaded fries. It's great. I was just like, wow. Yeah.
They look
York, big time.
Oh my goodness me! I don't even know what to do. Actually, Richard, I don't know how to. This is the first time this has ever happened. This is the first time that this has ever happened. But we have got our official. I actually feel quite emotional. We have been given from Mark Warwell £2. Thank you so much. You know what? It's the best £2 anyone's ever given me. Us, Murillo for CDM. You know what? I'm all behind Murillo for CDM now. But thank you so much for the super chat. We've never had one before, Richard. What? I don't know what to say.
I don't know. Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, most of the time you'd be like £2, okay. But in this case, oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Mark. That's very kind.
Where does that money go?
It goes into a Swiss bank account that's building now.
Well, that's
an offshore.
Thank you so much. Listen, yeah, we were able to activate the super chat thing once we passed 500 subscribers and a certain amount of watch hours, and we did that a while ago, and we're very grateful to have that. So guys, listen, I want to get moving forwards. We're nearly out of time, but my doorbell has just rang. I'm gonna have to do a Matt Davis and go and answer it. So talk amongst yourselves. The game on Sunday is the women's game as they take on Peterborough at home. They're going to be playing in the cup. So the women won 2-1 away at Derby at the weekend. How important is it that the women are now training as well at the home roll facilities, Richard?
Yeah, I think we can't understate, right, Dan, how many times we've talked about the fact that Marinakis is putting so much energy, money, and effort into building up that women's team, including obviously making them paid players now so that those ladies have the opportunity to potentially be full-time footballers, which is brilliant. And it really helps us, I think, solidify the involvement that he has in the community, the way that he wants to build this brand that is Nottingham Forest and make them a force for good in the world of women's football as much as men's. And so that's another great statement, another step forward, I think, to that. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, I was expecting Greg to pop back in with a tray of loaded fries then, just in time, ready to show up.
Just like it's chomping away.
Yeah.
No, it's great all round. You know, within the last 18 months or so, he seems to have spotted a few opportunities to really build Forest as a bigger impact in the whole community. So women's football, definitely one of that, the netball and everything. So, you know, it's just part of a bigger plan, which is definitely great to see. And, this season all seems to be going to plan in that league for the women's team.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's truly fantastic, to see them integrated, and I've genuinely found myself drawn to the women's results. I'm looking out for them. I'm sharing the news with my son. He's keen to know. The integration is a good thing. The fact they're playing at the City Ground, we've talked about that, is a fantastic thing. Them training at home road facilities, I think they're still going to be working out of Nigel Doughty Academy for certain things as well. But following the investment from the club into the grass surfaces, which were previously used by Nottingham Forest men's team under Brian Clough, Home Road now provides Forest women with a high quality pitches and an exclusive environment for Carly Davis' side to train and prepare for their upcoming fixtures. That was a little bit from the website. It can only be a good thing, right? Holly and Ollie over on Forest Women Fancast are doing a fantastic thing with their pod. So I encourage you to listen to that. The episodes are really well put together, professional. So I encourage you to go and listen to that as well. So all good things are happening at the club. Okay, I want to quickly put a shout out for our appearance yesterday. We have been given an appearance fee, not to be outdone. Wolfie has come forward with our second super chat ever. God, it's like London buses. We wait for one and all of a sudden they all come at you. So thank you very much, Wolfie, for that super chat, £2. That will go into the Swiss bank account for me and Richard to run away together in the future. So look, it's just about the end of the episode today. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has liked and subscribed so far. We are up to 757 on the ticker tape, if you like, which is amazing. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before Christmas, okay? We would never have dreamed that we would get people watching and interacting, whether it's one person, 5 people, 10 people, whatever. You've taken us to your hearts, a lot of you, and got to know us, and we thank you for that. And I keep repeating it, and I'll never stop repeating it, because we just don't take it for granted, do we, Richard? We're absolutely chuffed, aren't we?
Oh gosh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's progressed in a way, and we've met some great people and great friends, Dan included in that, along with Raf and others. And so the way that we've expanded our own little individual Forest family within our podcast has been remarkable. And so there's just awesome. And include Wolfie as well. He's been absolutely brilliant and supportive. Oh yeah. So appreciate you, buddy. But yeah, I'm completely in accord with you there. It's been an awesome experience thus far.
It has been. I'm just going to just touch on that a bit more, because when I started kind of following the Forest Focus pod, I've said before that it really helped me with my own mental health, because I was, certainly through COVID, when they were doing that, and just that community feel. And since we've had Talking Reds as well, it's just helped us to feel like we've been, drawn more into the fan base, if you like, and we're no better than any other fan. We might have a podcast and get to speak about the club, but our opinion is no more or less valid than the next guy down the road. So that is really important. We say that. I want people to come on the pod. We've always said, if you want to come on, we're going to do the one with episodes, and you're happy and welcome to come and sit in the chair. But it's helped my mental health, my current state of mental health, no end. Not that I have particular struggles with that. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. But we've taken a massive dive into this podcast, and we put work into it because we want it to be the best it can be. And we're very grateful for you watching, and any feedback that comes over in the comments. We want to hear what you guys think about what we're doing in terms of content. What would you like to see? Any kind of guests you want us to try and get. We are a little bit further down the food chain than some of the other podcasts, and we're still watching them and hoping that you'll watch them as well. But we'll do our best for you, and hopefully your feedback will help us to make the channel the best it can be. The likes of Dan and Raf and Paul Morley, who's now coming on as well, and others such as Jamie Martin, and Holly's going to come back on, and other people that down the line. They're all helping to make Talking Reds into the kind of channel we want it to be for you, which is all about Forest. Okay, right, enough of that sobby stuff, because I'll start welling up. The quiz question that I asked you at the start of the podcast was, how many permanent managers have Nottingham Forest had in their entire history? Not including the caretakers. We're talking about the permanent managers. Do you want to take a gamble of a guess, Richard?
In numerology, 7 is a sign of completion, so I'm going 7.
Or in our entire history, 7. What are you talking about?
I don't know.
7.
Oh, wait, it was 100 plus years. Sorry, I'm living in an American mentality where sports has only been around
7 in the last 7 years.
Decades, yeah. So I'm gonna say 30. 30.
Okay, 30. Not bad. Dan.
Yeah, because I was trying to think. We've had we had 23 managers in 23 years, didn't we? But then before that, we didn't have that many. So I'd go 30, 38.
Ooh, anyone in the comments want to quickly jump in with their thoughts? I'm going to reveal the answer is in fact 39. So Dan, you were just one out. Oh yes, and the play, yeah, 39 permanent managers. Now the place that I got that stat from is the guest for our next One With episode, which is coming out tomorrow. We are thrilled to be doing the one with Gary Cumberland. Now, Gary Cumberland is a chap that we mentioned on FFTV last night. He lives in Arizona, in the US. He's from Nottingham. He's a Nottingham-born Forest fan, but lives out in the States now. And he has built a website called The City Ground. Okay, now this site is extraordinary. Excuse me. This site is extraordinary. It is full of all of the stats and facts and anything else you want to know about Forest. It's got all lists of managers, it's got lists of players, it's got results, it's got, you name it, it's got it. It's absolutely unbelievable. I'm putting the link into the comments as we speak, so I encourage you to go and find that website. If you're a Forest fan, trust me, you want to visit this website. He updates it all the time. It's a never-ending website in terms of weekly matches getting inputted into it. So go and check it out. Gary's coming on with Richard and I tomorrow. We're going to be going live at 1:30 UK time in the afternoon. And we're excited to have him on to tell us about that particular website, hear his Forest story, and chat about Forest, of course, and all the other things. So please do check out thecityground.com. The link is in the comments for you to check out and to find. And please do join us for the one with Gary Cumberland tomorrow as well. All right. Okay. That takes us to the end. Richard over in Oklahoma. It's been a bit of a morning for you. The alarm didn't go off and my alarm was, oh my gosh, what's going on? I had to phone him to, are you up? Are you up? Yeah, I'm up. I'm coming.
I'm like a spoiled celebrity, right? I just, you got to wake me up from my bender. So yeah, no, yeah, thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. I appreciate you being my alarm this morning. I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, because I know Wolfie's made the comments of how early I've been getting up, but it's been worth it every single time.
So. It's the first time that's happened, actually, and I felt terrible. I thought I better wake him. 10 minutes to go. He's never ever not on. But hey, you're there. What was that? Could you hit
like and subscribe? Like and subscribe.
Ah, there you go. In case you missed it,
like and subscribe.
There you go. Like and subscribe. Dan, thanks ever so much for joining us. As ever, your input is gratefully appreciated.
No, thanks for having me. And can I just give a shout out to my parents? Well, they are regular watchers of this. I know.
Wow, yes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I think they do definitely watch most episodes on here. So shout out to them. I enjoyed a lovely week of ice cream and food in Devon with them the other week. So I have to thank them for that as well.
Amazing. You were the chaperone, I believe. You were the driver. You were taking them off down to Devon.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Helping get them around a bit. But no, it's a good week. I think they think it's a chore for me, but obviously, still enjoy spending time with parents and stuff. So
100%.
Yeah. Shout out to them.
Mr. and Mrs. Cook, thank you for lending us your son to help us move through the episodes, and thank you for watching. It's great to have you on board with us. Okay, guys, that's us done and dusted. I'm going to end this because we've gabbled and gabbled and gabbled. This is Talking Reds, and we'll see you